Hello, my name is Donna Schulte. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, and I'm interviewing Charles John Butke on August 15, 2006 at the Harrison Branch Library. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Chuck, how are you? We were just talking about before, were you drafted or did you enlist?
Enlisted when I was at the University of Cincinnati, enlisted in the reserve, and they allowed us to finish out the year, and then they took us into the service. Give us a lot more tests, test after test after test. Wound up going back into a university, University of Wisconsin, and they put us back into engineering school where I came out of to start with. So we were in engineering school until they closed it down. When they closed it down, they put us in the infantry, and what a rude awakening that was, because we'd been living in at that time most of the accommodations for fraternities and things had been shut down, so we were actually living in a fraternity house right off of Lake Mendota. It was absolutely beautiful, and they put us on a train, took us to the infantry out at Camp White, Oregon. And what an awakening. Tell you, that was something else.
Were you training to be officers?
No, they were training us to be engineers because their thought was, and they were right, because there was shortage of engineers after World War II. The ASTP was the Army Specialized Training Corps. It included doctors, dentists, lawyers, and especially language, because there wasn't too much foreign languages available, people to interpret here in the United States. And they were training people in all the foreign languages, especially the European languages, because they knew what was going to be going on after the war, and there would have to be people available to interact with them. And the engineering group. And they allowed all the balance of the ASTP group to stay put, and they finished out. But the engineers, they totally shut down, so we wound up in the infantry.
So where did you train then?
Well, we were moved to Camp White, Oregon, where we trained as infantry because we'd not had basic training. And I was trained as a rifleman, and I was an assistant. I carried ammunition for a BAR, which is a Browning automatic rifle. I didn't have the rifle on. I wasn't a rifleman, BAR man at that time. The man who I assisted was. And that's what I was trained as, a rifleman. When they closed the units, the ASTP units, and filled in, it was, I'd imagine the generals and whatnot seen that the end of the war was approaching, and they needed people to fill out the divisions here in the States that needed to go overseas. And so we were taken into the division as to fill out the vacancies that were in there, because replacements weren't coming in at that time. And as soon as we had the division full, well, then we were ready to go overseas after that. We moved from Camp White to, let's see, a camp that I can't quite remember. Then down the coast further to San Luis Obispo, which was north of San Diego, and the Marines trained us in amphibious landing, which was another exciting thing, because I figured from then on we were going to be storming beaches in the Pacific, which we were then later. But that was our infantry training. We became amphibious infantry then. I can't, let me see, anything interesting happened during that time? Well, not a whole lot.
Well, when you arrived overseas, where did you land?
We arrived first at Hawaii. We stayed at Hawaii for, I think, perhaps a month and a half. And they loaded ships, and the 96th Division then was supposed to take the island Yap, Y-A-P. It was a small island, heavily armed though, with an aircraft landing for Japanese, which was south, I guess, a good, well, probably south-southeast, south-southwest of Hawaii. When we were about halfway there, or three-quarters of the way there, our orders were changed, and changed to go south of the equator to near an area of the Solomon Islands. We never got into the Solomon Islands. We were always sort of at sea, you know. But we were at an assembly point where they were assembling everybody to invade the Philippines. So I can't remember exactly how long that took.
Got your papers here?
I got some papers there to tell some dates if anybody's really interested in it.
So what you were with the 96th Infantry?
Excuse me?
You were with the 96th
Yeah.
Infantry.
Company K, 381st Infantry. And it's assigned to the 96th Division. Okay, Leyte, what day did we land on Leyte? I had it down here somewhere. That was in the Philippine Islands.
Mm-hmm.
October the 20th, 1944, we landed in Leyte. And that was approximately, I was just a bit before General MacArthur came on board there on shore. He actually came on shore, I think it was called A-Day or something like that, A-Day +3. But he came on shore. We were still up the beach a little bit, and he had not gone in too far. And I guess we had our first active encounter with enemy, which was something else again, on about the 4th or 5th day, I think, after we were ashore, the 6th day, something like that. And this sticks in my mind yet today, and I guess it'll stick until the day I die, but I was assistant to this humongous guy. He was, their family was not over in the country too far from Yugoslavia, lived in Cleveland, and the draft come up, and he wound up getting in the Army really before he could do anything else. And he was the BAR man, gigantic fellow. He's about 6'4". He could have been a linebacker really anyway. His name was Rudy. And after this first encounter that we ran into, he came up to me and he said he was tired. And that's what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to alternate back and forth with a person. This Browning automatic rifle in itself weighed 23 pounds. And of course you carried a lot of ammunition too. Maybe as much as 20 pounds of ammunition with it. So there was a lot of weight there to be. So he said he got tired and would I take the BAR, which I did. And it just, today, he died about, I guess, 20 minutes later. And something like that, I think, sticks with you the rest of your life.
What happened?
Well, Japanese counterattacked it for a moment or two, and they hit him with something, and I don't know what. Because you're all in this you're in the midst of a lot of activity there, and it isn't quite like you see on the movie screen. Dense jungle all around you. You don't see sometimes what's going on from here, that chair away. So I wound up with a BAR then, and it's a very active rifle. It can fire as fast as a machine gun, although it only held about 21 rounds, that much. But after I once had it and seen what it could do, I wouldn't give it up for anybody. I carried it the rest of the time. Well, we went on through the Philippines. Well, let's see. We were on Leyte, and I guess for 3 weeks we were probably active on the line, and we were supposed to come back for like a rest period on the beach, you know. And there was a battery of howitzers there that needed some protection because they were coming around. Jungles were so thick and people could infiltrate out so easily, you know, and they were coming in and taking pot shots at these guys because they really aren't armed when they're firing these big guns, you know, or big cannons. There's, I think, about 10 of them, as I recall. So we had to protect them for about a week, and then we were drawn away from that, and we rested for a while. We were given an assignment to go to, now this was an assignment, was just with the Company K and a heavy weapons company, which was Company M, and we were assigned to go to Samar. That's an island, it's a gigantic island, way bigger than Leyte, and it's a bit it's a bit northeast of where we were on Leyte. And there was supposed to be a battalion like a Japanese on the one side that we were supposed to go over there. Not a battalion, I mean like a company. And we were supposed to go over there and obliviate him and leave, you know. Well, when we got there, thank goodness, they were all gone. So that was a break. But we got to stay there for, I imagine, it was about a month or so. They did send us out on some patrols, and we did run into some Japanese. Not too many. I think an exciting thing that happened there that I'll never forget is a fellow by the name of Breland came down with a real bad case of appendicitis. And we were literally down there, and there weren't too many helicopters around to get anybody out or anything like that at the time, so the chance of getting him out of there was nil. But there was a missionary, a Baptist missionary from Germany who had come down there and married a Filipino woman some time ago. They had 2 grown daughters, and he'd run out of all medicines that he had. He didn't have any medicine. Fortunately, when we went there, they send a battalion medic with you, and they send like a unit of medical supplies in case anything should happen. They could give you immediate first aid, you know. And then there was a gallon of medical alcohol, which was like 100% pure alcohol. But this doctor had all the equipment there in a little clinic that he used to have when it was active, and they took Breland over there and fed him a diluted form of this medical alcohol. So he got so skunky drunk, didn't know what he was doing, and the doctor took his appendix out. And I seen him as recently as about 10 years ago at a reunion. He said he still had the scar. So you run into some strange things that happen. You just can't hardly imagine that. He didn't get infected with nothing.
It's amazing.
But I guess that was our good story about Samar. We came back to Leyte, and as time goes on, you have to do various things. We had a load, let's see, I think it's called an LCM, Landing Craft Mechanical. We had a load of landing craft mechanical because they already knew where we were going to invade the next time. These are these gigantic landing craft where the big front comes down and things can drive out of them, you know. And we loaded several of them. Not thinking, at the time, I never thought I'd get on one that we were loading at that time. Later on, we were assigned to one. But we were on Leyte then until just about a week or 8 days before we left to invade Okinawa. And that was a bit of a strange thing too, because we invaded on April 1st, which it was a Sunday, and it was Easter Sunday. And you just don't sort of think of anything like that going on ever on an Easter Sunday, you know. Well, anyway, in the bottom of the landing craft mechanic, there's a place for troops down there, and there's a place to bring all the landing boats that you're going to go in on or whatever you want. These things are called alligators. They were made specifically for going over coral reefs. So many fellas got hung up on coral reefs in the Pacific, and the Japanese really massacred them because they couldn't get over them, you know, with a regular landing craft. These things had treads on them, like a tank, and they were only exposed out of the water about this much. Had gigantic pumps on them, so any kind of a wave had come in, it was almost immediately pumped out, so the things would float good. And that's what was in the bottom. These incidentally set over 150 millimeter howitzer shells is used for the ballast in the very bottom of this. And over the top of the 150 millimeter howitzer shells are like 8 by 10, it'd be like railroad ties. The whole thing's lined with railroad ties, so you can drive all this equipment on and off. So that's what we used to go ashore with on Okinawa.
What was that like?
Well, it was surprising. We had one fellow was killed, and I think maybe 1 or 2 wounded that we knew of, but it was a very, very quiet landing, almost unbelievable. And we later found out, of course, they were all just dug into holes, and that was part of their planned operation, that they were going to hole up and do be as much a deterrent as they could to us. So They figured sooner or later we were going to wind up in Japan anyway, so they just wanted to hold us back, I guess kill as many people, and they pretty well succeeded in doing that around Okinawa. Anyway, we was able to cross that island, let's see, already in, I think we crossed the island to the other side in about, maybe I should say 4 or 5 days. Then we turned around and went back. And we wound up then going south, and I wrote the name of the line down here somewhere. There was this gigantic ridge down there called Kakazoo Ridge, and we wound up on the inland side of it where the ridge kind of goes down to nothing, you know, and we run out a bunch of Japanese, and you know, this was so convenient because, my gosh, there was holes dug already. We didn't have to dig foxholes, you know. And the one right out on the end was just so, it looked out on a beautiful green valley all the way around this thing. Most beautiful thing we'd seen in a long time after jungles and whatnot, you know. So that's where we wound up on the 9th. And then I got that far, and that same night about, well, the last thing I remember was looking at the watch. It was 5 minutes to 12 at midnight. And people say, well, and the valley was lit up by day, and people say, what's going on when you tell the story, you know? Well, the battleship Missouri was out there, and they have 16-inch guns on them, gigantic thing, cannons. And they were able to send up, you would call in the coordinates, and they could send out these gigantic magnesium flares, which would light up. You put up about 2 of them, you could just see like daylight for almost like about 15 minutes, you know. And they could keep it, really they could almost keep it daylight all night long if you wanted to. I don't mean daylight like this. I mean enough so you could see people moving and everything else, you know. So I remember it being 5 minutes to 12, and I looked over. It was just too much. I looked over the edge to see what was going on, and I seen these Japanese running around down there. And I was just ready to throw a grenade when I was aware of this thing fizzing and sparkling alongside of me. Well, that was a Japanese, from our training, we knew that was a Japanese knee mortar. People over here, and it's a mixture of words. People call it a grenade. They weren't too much bigger than our grenades that we use, but the way they went off is with a fuse, more or less like on a little fuse like you light 4th of July fireworks with it. But you could see these things sparkle, you know. Well, just prior to that, one of them landed in the foxhole behind me, and that hit our company lieutenant and our company staff sergeant in it, and you could tell the way they were sort of, well, you could tell that they were going to be dying because that thing went off just there, and it was horrible sounds, you know. Anyway, I was aware of this thing going off over here when I was about this far exposed, and I seen it sparkling just for a moment, and I went down like this, and it exploded. I didn't get myself all the way in, and it caught me along the back and my shoulder, and it penetrated my lung. And the hurt is bad, but it's a strange hurt because shock sets in immediately, you know, when it happens to you. And I thought, well, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going back. And I knew where a foxhole was, Company M in behind. And on the way going back there, this was extremely, extremely strange. One of them sort of landed right down here, and I seen that thing fizzing. And I just automatically jumped in the air. It went off when I was in the air, which it just yet amazes me at what happened in a way it happened. But it did. It caught me in the ankle and up and down this leg with more shrapnel. I went back, and I knew where this one foxhole was because during the day I knew who was going in those foxholes. I don't think it was much more than maybe 30 feet away. And the fella in there asked me for he seen me coming, and he asked me, he said, what's the password? Well, I forgot the password. And I just jumped in the foxhole. And I thought, my gosh, I made it, you know. Well, he knew by then I wasn't Japanese anyway. So, but when I got in there, well, let me go back then a long time ago. I'll go back to when I was really churched when I was a kid. And I learned how to pray, I learned how to go to church. But you know, when you get to be 16 years old, 17 years old, you begin to becoming very macho, and you sort of get away from those things and you forget about them. And all of a sudden you're older, you know, and here I wound up in a foxhole, and I remember real quick starting to pray. And that was about the last thing I remembered until somebody was poking me with a rifle early in the morning. And that's really the reason, the way you poke people that might have been hit along the way to see if they were still alive or not, because a lot of times somebody could be just passed out. And you would jar them enough if they said something, you know, you'd call the medic and get them first aid right away. So I was aware of somebody asked me if I was dead, and I wasn't, so got out of the hole. They took me back immediately to the company headquarters where our company man, he gave me morphine, several shots of morphine, and standard treatment for a hole back by the lung is to wrap up gauze in a thing about this big and you stuff it in the hole, which he did. And then they took us, some shelling setting in. They moved us into their burial spots on Okinawa for the native were dug into the side of a hill, and each family had their own like tomb inside of a hill, you know. Mm-hmm. And apparently they burned the bodies, and what was left, it just had, each family had a gigantic urn, maybe that high and this big. I remember seeing those. And a fellow in there told me that that's where they put the ashes, and all the family ashes then wind up in this one urn for, I guess, I don't know, I guess that urn is so big it'd probably never get filled. Mm-hmm. So the family ashes are all intermingled, which is kind of an interesting concept in a way. But anyway, I remember that very much. We went from there to a MASH unit, which they gave me more, a surgeon did some work on me and gave me blood. Moved me to, I think I was there another day and a half, and they evacuated us by airplane. They had an airplane. This was the Navy that did that. They had an airplane that would hold stretchers. And I think, if I don't remember right, there was 30 or 32 of us in stretchers on board this thing. And they flew us to Guam, 115th Naval Hospital, which we stayed. I had some surgery on my ankle there, and various other parts of my body where they had to take out some other pieces and stitch it up, you know. And then was there for, I don't know how long, maybe, I guess a month, and they put us on board a combination boat that was taking people back to the States. It was a strange boat. They had an area on that. It was probably as big as this area here, which was set up to hold people who really weren't in really dire need that time, but people who needed some medical attention. And it wasn't really a strict hospital type thing either, but who still needed some medical attention was in this room, you know. It wasn't a big room like this either. It was divided up in spots. And in the whole of the ship, they had Japanese prisoners. They would bring them up and out on deck every morning very early and run them around, give them exercise. And there was another place embarrassing, but there's another place on board where there were pregnant women who had got pregnant overseas, and they were taking them home so they could have the babies, you know. A mixture of, I guess, wax and waves and marionettes and all the various women who were in the services overseas. Interesting thing on board there, that was a chaplain, a Navy chaplain who was discharged from the service. He'd served out his time and got his official discharge. And he was around doing his duty even on board the ship, although he didn't have to, I don't guess, talking to everybody, find out how everybody was, if they needed any help. And he was from Cincinnati, by golly. And he found out I was from Cincinnati. And he was a pastor at a church on Clifton Avenue, up in Clifton. I forgot the name of the church now.
Annunciation?
Excuse me?
Annunciation?
I believe so, yeah. And he asked me if I could, when he got home, could he do anything for me? I said, well, yeah, if you don't mind, call my mom and dad. So he said he would, and he was asking anybody, even though they didn't live in Cincinnati, whether they wanted calls or not, because he told us at that time that the communications from the South Pacific were so bad. He said that it'd be time and time before anybody would hear about anything, you know. So we got back to San Francisco, and he came around, and the last thing he said was he'd call he was going to be in San Francisco at discharge, and then he was going to go home. So he said if he had the time, he'd even call him when he was there, you know. Well, anyway, they put me in Letterman General Hospital there, which I can't figure out how long I spent there now. Maybe a week or 10 days, I don't know. It was a great room. I had a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. I couldn't beat it. It probably cost you $10,000 a day today. Yeah. But anyway, he called then when he got home, called my mother and father and told them that I was wounded and that I was okay. And he didn't know where I was going from there. Well, after they sent us then to Kennedy General Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And what they try to do is get a person as close as they could to home, and yet that hospital would still have the expertise in case anything else needed to be done with whatever basically was wrong with you. And at that time, they had a Major K there who was supposed to be an outstanding chest and lung surgeon. He was supposed to be really one of the outstanding ones in the country at that time. He wouldn't take a rank higher than major because he still wanted to be in an operating room and under those conditions so he could use what he had learned, you know. Well, he told me that there was nothing else that could be done. It would heal, and the pieces of shrapnel that were on the lung you wouldn't dare try to take out. You would just, I guess you would ruin more. So they're still there today, by the way. If you take an x-ray, they're still there. And I got some other things done while I was. I finished healing, of course, and all the other things.
Were you sent home then after that?
After that, yeah, after about, I went home I left there the 29th of August. I think I might have got home September, maybe the 1st or 2nd, somewhere around in there.
And what year was that?
Got home. That'd be in 1945 then. Mm-hmm. And that was, it's so strange today is VJ Day. Mm-hmm. And I was actually home before VJ Day, about a week or two, you know. And that's another sort of strange thing to me yet today, that I got home before the war was over. Just that short period of time.
Did you go back to school?
Yeah, went back engineering school at the University of Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. And what else? I guess after that, well, I tell you what, I went back to school for a number of reasons. One, I figured if there was ever another war, or my kids was ever in a war, I wanted them to have all the education possible at the time, so they could have it, and maybe so they didn't have to fight out of a hole or something in the infantry, you know. And yes, engineer, yeah. And I went to work after I graduated as a process engineer with a Drackett company who processed soybeans at that time in Sheridanville. Mm-hmm. Mr. Drackett bought what Henry Ford sold out. He was the one that really got the United States interested in growing soybeans, you know. Mm-hmm. And he was going to make automobile bodies out of it, a mess of things. By that time, I guess he seemed that well, anyway, Mr. Drackett bought it. We were in the soybean. I was in the soybean business for half of my career. Then they sold out, and I went with Archer Daniel Midland. I was with them for 5 years. Come back and went with the Drackett Company in our special products division, which was entirely different than their soybean division, which is Windex, Drano, and all those type of things. And I worked with them until it was sold to Bristol Myers. Worked for Bristol Myers Squibb until I retired.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was your most memorable experience during the war?
in a war, getting out. I think the whole thing, when you look back at it, is really an experience. From what happened to, you know, we were going, like I say, we were going to college, and to have that and taken into the Army, and then having all those other tests, and they put us back into college, in engineering school again, which was a good deal in a way. We got paid then for going to school. We weren't getting paid for going to school before. That was a good, that was a good experience. I think the infantry and the probably the disciplines that you learn there,
How old were you when you?
It's good. I went in the day before my 21st birthday because I'd been in college, Day before my first day before my 21st birthday, or maybe a couple days before, something like that. And let's see, when I come out then, I guess I was 23, 21. Yeah, I guess I come out when I was 23 years old.
You got a lot of medals.
Yeah, got I can run through them briefly if you want to. This is a bronze star. That just happens to be the Army crest. It's standard from the Army, I guess, from the day they founded it up until now, and still is. And that's a Purple Heart. That's the Asiatic Pacific ribbon. And there's 2 battle stars there. One is for Leyte and the other one's for Okinawa. And this is an unusual one here. This is a bronze arrowhead. When you go ashore as an assault wave, or say if you're in a paratroopers, they drop paratroops, when you're in a front and there's nobody behind you to back you up, you're eligible for this arrowhead here. And this here is the Philippines Liberation Medal. We had 2 major battles in the Philippines. They give you a battle star for each one of those. That's a combat infantry badge. And little story behind that, that's a sharpshooter medal. From when we first went there, General Easley was a commander of the 381st Infantry, and he was captain of the Army's rifle team prior to World War II, and he had all these fancy rifles. He'd put on a display. He could knock a dime out of a thing about 300 yards, but he just insisted you had to stay on that rifle range till you was a sharpshooter. That's a sharpshooter's medal, but he wouldn't let you get off till you got it. That's a combat infantry badge that you receive when you are on the front lines. This is a good conduct medal. And then these are the ribbons that go with it. And this is
that looks fairly new.
Yeah, I just got it. That's the Philippines Independence Medal. And they did, this one here is not issued. All this are official issues by the U.S. government, all those things. This is an official issue by the Philippines government. Now these are officially approved, and you can wear them on your uniforms or whatever, but you have to buy it. The Philippines was going to give it to us. They ran out of money. Anyway, so I finally got around to getting the thing. This is a distinguished service medal for the 96th Division received. That's the ribbon for that. And then the Philippines issued a distinguished service ribbon for the Philippines, which is that one there. And that was just a 96th Infantry Division patch. And that was, we joined the 96th Infantry Division Association. And that's just a little thing that they give you that I stuck in there. This you're allowed to wear underneath your epaulette here when you receive a Distinguished Service Medal ribbon. That's a ribbon. This medal here, again, is a medal you're allowed to wear, but you got to buy it. That's the World War II Victory Medal. I just stuck it there, but I didn't want to really put it in there. And the reverse side of this describes why you were given this Distinguished Service Medal and ribbon.
And this was for Okinawa?
That was for
It was the
Okinawa.
ridge that you were talking about.
Yeah, but the whole thing was, this whole thing was for the entire time it was on Okinawa. They covered the 3 months that the division was on Okinawa.
Mhm.
Had terrible losses. Out of 10,000, I think the losses and killed are on there, listed on there even. It was really a grueling, hard, terrible, terrible campaign.
1,504 killed.
You know,
The division killed a total of 37,763 of the enemy in 73 days of fighting. Its own battle losses totaled 7,294, including 1,504 killed.
and that's pretty gruesome for a division. There's roughly 10,000, you might say in round figures, for a division, and some things were attached to it, you know. So, you know, when you're talking 1,500, that's an awful lot out of 10,000 to be killed.
Did you lose a lot of friends?
Well, just about everybody. I ran into one finally. Well, I ran into a few. I ran into one finally at a reunion who happened to be in the foxhole next to me the night that I got hit. Well, the very next night, well, he got hit and lost the bottom part of his leg. And just about everybody, when we were out on that very end, overlooking that, he told me just about everybody in our squad was killed before we were pulled off of that end.
How many's in a squad?
Let's see, squad 8, about 8.
So you've been to some reunions.
Excuse me.
You've been to some reunions then.
Yeah, last one I was to was here in Cincinnati. They were one of the first entire divisions to start having reunions after World War II. I happened to be at the second one because I was in New York on business, and we were in, I think it was the Plaza Hotel. Some people took us out for dinner that night, and when I come out in the big lobby, there was a great big banner up there. It says 96th Infantry Division Reunion. I didn't even know they were going to have reunions, you know, and that was exciting.
Was it? Were there a lot of people there?
No, let's see, on that first one, I think they only had maybe 150, 200. I think the most that had ever come to reunion was about 550 in all the years that they'd had it, because they had such terrible casualties, you know. And a lot of times the replacements come in for a while with the division. I don't think they felt like they were maybe a total part of it, and maybe they didn't want to participate, but few of them came.
What do you do at the reunions?
Well, let's see, the first night is just a general get-together where everybody's meeting their wives, and some people would bring kids and stuff, like you talk, and you sign in, and then you go off to somebody's corner somewhere and start swapping stories. What have you done later, and what are you doing, you know? And then, let's see, the next day would be generally the city that you were in would give you one tour to one place in the morning and one tour to another place in the afternoon, so you could see the exciting things in that city, you know. And then the next day, in that evening, well, let's see, they generally last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was the main things. And Friday would sort of be the same, except on Friday, the last thing that closed down Friday was one of the chaplains would still have a service for all the ones who had missed and passed on since. We were starting to have reunions, you know. And then on the Saturday was sort of free, and in the evening you had a big dinner dance, which was pretty nice.
You were at the World War II Memorial dedication?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's the one that got, I guess they found out, somebody had told them, I guess through the Disabled American Veterans, they must have given them names who was going there, and that's how comes Carl Wilkerson, the Cincinnati Enquirer, must have picked up my name and asked if he could come out for an interview, which he did, and I told him, I didn't feel like going too much with a group. I felt like I was going to go over, but I didn't know how. My son goes back and forth over there all the time for a number of meetings, so he said, Dad, I'll take you over and go over with you and we'll have a good time. So we did, and that was extremely impressive. I never thought that memorial was anything like that. You know, you see pictures of it.
This is the one in Washington?
Yeah, in the Washington, yeah. But you don't see the enormity of the whole thing in 3D until you really get there, you know. It's really impressive. And I liked it so much better than, you know, to me, I visited the Vietnam Vets Memorial when we were there too. And I'd seen that before. And it's rather such a depressing type of, you know, it's so depressing. But this one still gives you a feeling of sadness and elation both at the same time, you know. And I think the other thing that impressed me about it too, that it was done, the government donated the land, but all the other monies that went into it were donations and private donations from private. So the government did not have to put any money into it at all. And that was quite a weekend. Met a number of people. I met, oh my goodness, I've got a name on the tip of my tongue there.
Politician?
Who?
Was it a politician?
Yeah. He's a man got hurt real bad in the service.
Oh, yeah. Senator McCain.
Yeah, met him, and met the other one got hurt bad too.
Bob Dole?
Yeah, Bob Dole. In fact, my son knows him a bit, so got to meet him pretty good. And I thought the speakers at the presentation, at the dedication was tremendous. And of course, there was a number of get-togethers, of course, that night, and there were like get-togethers all day long. Didn't really see. I wore a hat with a 96th Division insignia on it, and I had some people come up to me and asked me if I knew so-and-so. Well, you know, that's almost impossible out of 10,000 people in the division to know somebody, and that happened. After that one interview, and it went online, Associated Press put it online. It went on. It was online from Guam all the way to England, and English-speaking papers, you know, whoever subscribes to the Associated Press articles and wants them in there. And I had calls from just all over everywhere.
They were hoping that maybe you knew
Yeah,
something?
that it was so. A lot of them were so sad. I'll never forget one lady. I guess she still hadn't gotten married. She was engaged at the time when the fellow went overseas with a 96th Division, and he come out of ASTP too. So it was just, but he didn't come out of Wisconsin. He come out of another university. But anyway, it was just like I had to know him, you know, and I really didn't. But that was so sad, and it was mostly things like that. And relations that live around the country. They all called, and I hadn't heard from them for a long time.
You had mentioned that in some of the articles things got cut out. Is there
Well,
something you'd like to...
I'll tell you this one. The people don't want to, I guess, I don't know why you do it, or why it's done, but I guess maybe, well, here, I'll tell you this story. You know, I told you I prayed in a foxhole, and then I don't know really what happened, except for the next hours until they punched me. This was you ever hear of a peace that passes all understanding? This was a peace that passed all understanding. I didn't see a white hole at the end of the tunnel or nothing like that. This was just utterly, totally peace and bliss for all that time.
Until someone nudged you?
Until someone nudged me. And ever since then, I've been a prayer, and I've been a churchgoer all the time, ever since then. But I suppose, and I've mentioned this also, well, anyway, I guess for some reason you don't see things like that published too much in a newspaper that's circulated, you know. And I guess maybe, and the other thing in newspapers and other articles, I realized that I was interviewed some for professional things relative to the business, you know, and I know they got so much space to fill. And you got to use certain words and everything to make it fit in the space. And certain things that a person tells you, you just say, well, I can take that one out and won't lose the continuity of the article, you know. So, I don't know what they call it, editorial...
License?
License, editorial license, yeah. And At least when I asked about it, that's what they said, editorial license. But anyway, I can understand that.
Well,
So-
we have it recorded now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, here it is.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Who?
Is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
Well, after the service, I was fortunate enough to be in the proper places at the proper time, and I was able to obtain a lot of patents on my work. My name's on a lot of patents. And my son, through a lot of, I wanted the lawyers to do this at Bristol Myers Squibb just before I quit. I guess they knew it was such a job that they didn't want to tackle it, you know. But anyway, the patents are in the United States and 12 foreign countries. And my son got them all together, and he got them put together in a book, and it's about 650 pages.
My goodness.
And that's about the last thing that's been done. He wanted to do it for a couple of reasons. One, make me happy finally, and the other one, maybe have something that they could pass on, you know.
We have a lot to pass on here, too.
Yep.
Should be very proud of that.
Kind of amazing the way they sort of accumulated. These little things here are just lapel buttons. You can wear.
Did you know your wife then, when you were in the service?
Met my wife actually before I went into the service, and then after I come out, I was in kind of a, I think I weighed 132 pounds. I was skin and bones, and the last thing I wanted to do at that time was get married. I wanted to finish my education and get a job, and so in 2 years, I had a job. And I think about 6 months later, we got married after that. So we've been married, I think we got either 53 or 54 years coming up. Or is it
Remember
longer?
the date?
Yeah, it's,
You better.
My wife's birthday is August the 27th. I remember that one. I forgot it so often. Do I remember the other one? It was in March. I forgot the date though right now.
Yeah, you've got some time.
I got some time to think about that, haven't I?
Well, thank you so much.
All right,
for your interview.
Been a pleasure.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was home, I guess maybe about 10 years or so.
Oh, really? That long, huh?
When I got the Bronze Star and a Purple Heart when I was home about 10 or 15 years. I can't quite remember anymore. Believe it or not, I was home and discharged and I actually got home when a knock came at the door one day, and the telegram came and told my mom and dad that I was wounded in service. This is the truth. The truth.
But they were glad to have you home.
They were, like I say, the communications out of the South Pacific must have been just horrible.